Welcome to That Boxing Writers Podcast, the weekly podcast show about boxing. I'm That Boxing Writer, Jeremy Harridges, and let's start the show. Hello, fight fans. I'm That Boxing Writer, Jeremy Harridges, and welcome for episode 3 of That Boxing Writers Podcast. We've got quite an episode for you today, and it's been a bit of a whirlwind this week. First off, we have the news that Errol Spence Jr. is out against Manny Pacquiao. Yordenis Ugas is in. I'm sure that you probably heard that information already. Nothing new there. Just broke a couple days ago. But that was a center point of this episode was taking an advanced look at Spence versus Pacquiao. Now that's off. Now we're talking Ugas versus Pacquiao. I actually had the chance to talk to Manny Pacquiao and Yordenis Ugas just yesterday for their virtual media conference, which was good. I've got a piece up on that right now on fansided.com/boxing, so you can check out what they had to say to me. And yeah, I mean, what a bummer. It's just the continuation of crazy things happening in boxing. Whenever we have a good fight, it just seems like it's cursed, right? That it's doomed to fail. You can go all the way back to, Fury versus Wilder 3. And, now you also have David Benavidez, who just tested positive for COVID. He's off. He was supposed to fight Jose Uzcategui. Not happening. Not that was such a pinnacle bout, but just another matchup that's been canceled during the summer. Never got Canelo Plant. That's now been extended to October. If that fight happens, if he ends up fighting Plant. So it just seems that every time that we are looking forward to a marquee matchup, somehow, some way, something goes wrong to tarnish it, which is a real bummer. So that was a real rough way to start off the week. Other than that, last weekend, the WBA shenanigans involving the Gabriel Maestra versus Michael Fox fight were horrendous. You had the terrible judging that went down. Now, there were 3 judges that turned in terrible scorecards, but the Martinez-Rizzo scorecard that was turned in, Gloria Martinez-Rizzo, everyone's talking about her now, 117 to 110 in a fight that Michael Fox clearly won. That's got everyone buzzing. Everyone's been talking about it, and maybe this will be the start of reform for sanctioning bodies in boxing, because it just stunk of a level of corruption. First of all, that she was allowed to judge, considering the fact that she had, vile tweets, racist, prejudiced tweets out there, and exposed her character. Not too many people in the general public pay attention to judges until something really wrong happens, as we saw in this fight. But great job to Corey Erdman, who cataloged her, terrible, vile tweets. He was the one that really screenshotted it, put it all together, put it out there. I took a look at the history in my After the Fight column this week about sanctioning bodies, particularly the WBA, and issues that they've had in the past. I went all the way back to 1982, looked at a few articles that Pat Putnam wrote, particularly one article that he wrote specifically talking about the WBA and their corrupt politics, about how they've, been accused of bribing judges and things of that nature. I also take a look at Gloria Martinez-Rizzo's husband, who was once a WBO official, who was once accused of trying to bribe people to advance fighters up the ladder, or accepting bribes to advance fighters up the ladder. That was an article in the Sweet Science that was, again, got my attention from Corey Erdman, who put it out there. So, he did a fantastic job of really exposing this stuff, and I just try to offer some more clarity on the situation and the history of the WBA and some of their shady practices in my After the Fight column, also on fansided.com/boxing. So please check that out. Great episode for you guys today. 3 guests, 3 amazing people, and I think you're going to really like it. First off, we have Adrian Clark, and I'll talk about Adrian a little bit more in detail, but someone that I've known for years, great guy, really close with Errol Spence. That's why I had him on. I'll get more into that. I also have boxing writer and managing editor for nyfights.com, Abraham Gonzalez, with me today, and he talks about all sorts of things. We talk about obviously the news between Ugas and Pacquiao, the fallout from Errol Spence. We talk about the Olympics a little bit. He's also an active duty Marine, which is incredible. He just was at a function with Jamel Herring. We talk a little bit of Herring, Stevenson, and just a little bit about everything about boxing. And finally, the big interview is with Chordale Booker, undefeated super welterweight, 16-0, 7 KOs, a guy that you should know more about. He's got a number of bouts planned, trying to get into action in 2021, and really, make this an active year during the last half of it. So I have a really good talk with Chordale Booker, super nice guy. We also talk about maybe some of those rivalries brewing down the path. I think he's a super welterweight that you should be paying attention to, and he's a former national champion as an amateur. So that's a good one as well. So let's kick it off. Let's start with the interviews. The first one is with Adrian Clark. I had this interview several days ago. Actually, I talked to Adrian the day before the Errol Spence news broke. So the whole idea was with Adrian, he was going to kind of take us into the world of Errol Spence, give us an insider's look. I mean, they've known each other for years. He's a close confidant, advisor, and someone that has known Errol for a lot of years, has seen him in the gym. So I was getting insight from him. I really kept this intact because I wanted you guys to see and hear what Errol Spence looked like going into this fight. And from Adrian's account, I mean, this was the best Errol Spence we've ever seen. And what a tragedy that, he has the torn retina and he's out of the Manny Pacquiao fight. So when you're hearing the interview, keep in mind, it happened the day before the news broke on Tuesday that Errol Spence is out of the fight. So you hear from Adrian Clark about being around Errol Spence during his camp, the type of condition he was, and that just should make us all kind of like cringe a little bit more, like, oh my God, what a good fight we were about to have. I still think the Ugas fight's going to be good, but obviously Errol Spence is on a whole different level, and that's where we're at. So hear what he has to say about Errol Spence, but he also gives us a good insight into the person that Errol Spence is. So I think that we can still take something away from that interview, even though Errol's not in action. And if anything, it just makes it that much more desirable if Pacquiao beats Ugas to see that matchup, which I still think we're going to see. I think we're going to see it. I think Manny Pacquiao wants that big mega fight. But Adrian takes us there. Former boxing manager. He worked with Fight Network and was an advisor to them on their boxing programming. He has the Protect Yourself at All Times initiative, which started off as a book, an advice book that he gave to fighters, and he's really turned it into his own brand and his own concept, where he tries to give fighters advice how to beware of the pitfalls outside the ring, to educate fighters about the boxing business. And I think it's a great plan. He talks more about it. Definitely check it out. But here's my conversation with Adrian Clark. Hello, fight fans. I'm here with Adrian Clark. And Adrian Clark, if you don't know who he is a man of many hats. He has been a boxing manager. He's a writer. He's been a network television advisor. And he's also created his own brand along with his original book, Protect Yourself at All Times. He's the brains behind PYaAT. Adrian, how you doing, my man?
I'm doing too much, man. I appreciate that I'm doing way too much, man. I need to slow down, but I'm good, brother. How are you?
I'm good. It's here for episode 3 of the podcast, so it's been a fun endeavor, and I'm always trying to look for new creative people to bring on. I've known you for a long time, and you happen to be connected with so many individuals and you've helped them out in so many different ways. One of your good friends, Errol Spence Jr., is going to be fighting in 2 weeks. For people that don't know, you weren't actively his manager, but how did you come to know Errol, and what's your connection to Errol?
So, we're both from Dallas. And actually, Lou Mezzarana, he's old school manager. He passed away, I think, last year. But Lou told me about Errol in 2010. And he's like, man, look, you got to know this guy. He's from your city. Like, he's the next, like, best thing. And I did some research on him. I think I was like maybe a couple months removed from college and looked him up, reached out to him, and we kind of talked in 2010, but nothing concrete. But before he left for the Olympics, I was always around, and Derek was training Jerry Belmontes, who was my first client at the time. So we were always in the gym together, and we just got close. And before you knew it, he's asking me more questions about business, and I'm just giving him honest answers. And he saw me as a guy that he could trust, and it's almost been a decade, and I'm still that guy that he can trust. It just formed into a really good friendship, man. So we've done some really good work together.
I know that, whenever you're a celebrity or an athlete, and especially when you hit it big, as Errol's hit it big. I mean, he's arguably the best welterweight in the world, one of the best pound for pound fighters in the world. And you've seen that evolution from him starting off to him now in this position where he's going to be in this giant mega fight. How has he stayed the same, and what have you seen from Errol during that evolution in his career?
A producer from Fox asked me the same question, like, has he changed? And honestly, man, he's still the same guy, man. Of course, I think his taste has grown as far as like the things that he can buy for himself and his family and his daughters, especially, and his son. But as far as like him, like drastically changing, or there's just one thing that stands out, it's really not, man. He's consistently been the same guy since the Olympics and to now. So, but I think money brings a little bit of, I don't want to say change, more so like your taste for things really grow. So I think that would be the only change that I've seen. He's buying more expensive things now that he couldn't buy when he was in the Olympics or first starting off. But other than that, man, his work ethic has like grown. Now, I will say that what's changed is the work ethic. I thought he worked hard before, but like now going to the gym, man, and seeing him rip the bag for 40 minutes with no break in between, or doing the mitts with Derek for 30 minutes with no break in between, like the work ethic is insane.
And then one of the things that, I see you in the gym with him, pictures of you in the gym with him. And, without obviously giving any trade secrets, everyone's always very secretive of what they do in the gym. But, he's going to come out and he looks like he's in phenomenal shape already. And every boxer says, I'm in the best shape of my life. If Errol comes out and says, I'm in the best shape of my life, why should we believe that at this point? What have you seen that is evidence to that right now?
Without talking too much on it, man, it's like I said, he's grown each fight. And mind you, I mean, he had an accident about a year or so ago where, it could have taken his life. And he came back from that and took a pretty dangerous fight that most people like would not have, coming off of a car crash or an injury as he had. So he's gotten better, probably 100 times better since then. So, respect to Manny Pacquiao, man. He has his work cut out for him come August 21st, man. Because, like I said, without speaking too much on it, this is a different animal that's in the gym now, and he sees his chance to become legendary. He's seeing his chance to make his mark in history, to be mentioned amongst the greats, not just welterweights, but fighters all time. And it starts here. So his focus and his work ethic is it's off the meter right now.
I know that when Manny Pacquiao fought Keith Thurman, a lot of people thought that this might be Pacquiao's last fight. He's fighting a younger guy in Thurman. And I was there at the fight. I questioned that too, that this might be Manny Pacquiao's last fight. But Thurman was a bit of damaged goods at that point. I had reason to think that he might be missing something. I don't have any of those doubts about Errol Spence. Is this going to be Manny Pacquiao's last fight, do you think?
Yeah, no, this is a retirement party, man. Like Errol Spence has planned a retirement party for Manny Pacquiao. I think Keith, and I love Keith Thurman, man. I oftentimes make a joke. I don't know him on a personal scale that deeply, but I always say like I just feel like he fell in love, man. He fell in love with a woman, and I think his focal point went from boxing to, I want to man up and be this woman's husband and have a family. And I think he kind of drifted away from boxing where it wasn't as important as it once was. And it was a great fight between him and Manny, but I thought and I think they set it up to where that was supposed to be Manny Pacquiao's last fight. Keith Thurman was supposed to like essentially retire him and then become the top guy at the welterweight division. And he, respectfully, he dropped the ball. He dropped the ball with that, and now it's rolled to an individual that he ain't gonna drop the ball. I know, Errol loves his girl, but he's focused, man, laser focused, and yeah, this is, I think it's gonna be great. Not necessarily passing the torch, because I don't think Manny Pacquiao wants to pass the torch. Not right now. I think he feels he has some probably 2 or 3 more fights left, but he probably should have taken another one if he was planning to fight 2 or 3 more times, because whether it's the jab keeping Manny backwards or the body punching that I don't think Manny's probably experienced before, and then a young, strong guy. I don't think he's fought some strong welterweights, but I don't know if he's fought anybody that has the punching power of Errol Spence, especially from left hand to right hand. This is going to be an extremely tough fight for Manny, and I don't see him fighting anymore after this one.
You've seen, as you said, many Manny Pacquiao fights. You've been around boxing for a long time. How does this one end?
And I say this, I'm trying to be not biased. I don't want to be biased at all. I'm answering this question like Errol is not my friend. I see it going to a decision, man. He may be 42, but the last person I remember just stopping Manny Pacquiao was like Marquez, when Marquez caught him with that punch. And I think that punch would have knocked out 95% of fighters, if not more. Manny Pacquiao is not a guy you're just going to get in and just dismantle like that easily. I mean, he's experienced. He's been known to take a good punch, and he comes to fight. So, and he knows how to survive in the ring. Any great fighter. We talk about like the fight with Spence and Garcia, Mikey or Danny, and a great fighter knows how to survive in the ring and not get knocked out. People talk about, Spence couldn't finish Mikey Garcia or Danny Garcia, but when a guy's essentially fighting to survive, like they're not opening up offensively, they're not taking any risk. Like a great fighter, which I believe Danny and Mikey are 2 great fighters, they're not going to get knocked out because they're not going to open up. And Errol is smart enough not to gas himself out trying to get the stoppage when he sees a guy is not opening up offensively to engage in a fight. But Manny's experienced enough to where, he'll make sure that he's on his feet once the bell rings for the 12th round. So I see it as a unanimous decision for Errol Spence, but I know he has the power to stop him. But I think Manny's going to be game enough for this one to where he'll retire from the sport, but he won't get knocked out for this one.
I think that's a great response, and I don't think you showed any bias in there whatsoever. I thought that was a good prediction. Switching the focus a little bit, protect yourself at all times. For maybe some people that don't know what that is, just kind of summarizing it, this is something that's been around for a long time. You created it as originally as a primer to help educate fighters about the boxing business and to be smart. What's new with Protect Yourself at All Times? I know that you have the web series online. Talk about that a little bit.
Well, actually, I mean, Errol and I have been talking, and more than likely, he's going to start working closer with Protect Yourself at All Times. For me, I fought amateur, but I never fought pro. And one thing that I feel that's been missing with Protect Yourself at All Times is a pro fighter that, can actually speak to the business of boxing and that other fighters will listen to. Now, I know that as far as the education goes, it doesn't matter who speaks on it. It's valuable stuff that fighters and their families should know. But sometimes it's more valuable when you hear from someone that you look up to. And when you hear Errol Spence, who I've been in business meetings with Errol Spence, based going all the way back to 2013, 12, when I wrote about it in Dark Horse, my memoirs as a boxing manager, how we had a meeting with Rock Nation when they first kind of came out the gate, and they were offering like crazy money. One thing I told him, I think he had just fought. He had just fought in New York, and I asked him to just stick around. I would come up and we'll go to the office, but I've noticed in Errol, man, he's an astute businessman, and he takes his time with things. He doesn't rush into anything, and his favorite word is no, which any good businessman, like, your favorite word should be no. You should be hesitant with everything, especially engaging in signing long-term contracts. So I feel that Errol is going to be great, whether it be a spokesperson or a partner for Protect Yourself at All Times. It'll help take the brand and the education to another level, because now you have not just the fighter, but a potential megastar that is speaking on behalf of the company, man. So I'm excited to work closer with Errol and have the fighters hear from him more than they actually hear from me. But I'm excited, man. There's been a lot of great things going on with Protect Yourself at All Times, and again, I can't speak enough on the education part of it, because fighters are still being taken advantage of, like financially and contractually, in the sport of boxing, and they will continue to get taken advantage of if they do not educate themselves. I don't think we should wait around for a union or a council to be formed. As long as the fighters and their families are educated on the nature of the business and what they're getting into, they'll make more sound decisions moving forward. The more they actually have access to the knowledge, man. So things are moving.
If a fighter who's watching us right now or listening to us right now wants more information on Protect Yourself at All Times, where should they go?
You can go to the Instagram page. It's PYaAT __. But I also have a Facebook page, Protect Yourself at All Times LLC. But the website, excuse me, I'm sorry. We're revamping the website to where it's going to be like login based. So like we're trying to make it more exclusive, so to speak, to where we're trying to have it available for everyone. But of course, the traffic we want to drive to the website, which is PYaAT.org. And you'll be eligible to or able to log in and receive deeper information of Protect Yourself at All Times. Things that you may see on YouTube right now for Protect Yourself at All Times. You have the series and other things, but we're going to put more exclusive content, more consistent content on the website, to where every month there's either a new video or new newsletter, new information that can teach the fighters deeply, and deeper than what we already are. But also, we're really tapping into the parents. I'm a parent now, so I know how important it is to be on top of like what your son or your daughter is getting into. And although they may be 18, 19, 20, 21, they're still your kids. Like, they may believe that they're grown, but in your head, you understand that there's people out there that know more than they do. And if you're entering into a treacherous business, sometimes hiring a lawyer is not enough, especially if they don't specialize in the business of boxing. You need to have that education from a parent standpoint. So we're also going to have a parent login, to where the parents can log in and get more information and more education about the business of boxing. So PYaAT.org is going to be key for a lot of fighters and parents.
And I'm going to put it out there too, because I've spoken to so many fighters that you've helped out. Just giving just sound advice to, it's always been, that you've helped them out in a number of different ways. So if any boxers are watching or listening and you're feeling stuck in a rut, try to reach out to Adrian, because I'm sure he can help you out one way or another. He's a busy guy, but I know that he's more than willing to be generous with his time if you need him. Also, you've got numerous books out there, so check out Adrian Clark on Amazon.com. Latest one was Divorce Behavior, right?
Yeah, that's my latest one. Yeah, I mean, hey, but even if, I mean, that's still essentially protect yourself at all times. It's an extension of it. But if you're a fighter, male or female, you may want to read it. Even if you're not married, you may want to read it and see what you don't want to go through in regards to being with someone. So yeah, I'm busy, but not too busy to like help the fighters out. Even if I don't care if your record is upside down, man. I mean, you could have a 0-4 record or a 17-18 record. Like you're still a fighter, and you still need help. You still need advice. So this is not just something that's for the elite fighters or for guys that are gonna be world champions or are world champions. This is for everyone that is a professional fighter that's looking for guidance or looking for help in regards to their careers, man. So reach out to me on Instagram or Facebook, send me a message, and I always get back to the guys.
I love it. Adrian, as always, thank you so much for your time. And I look forward to seeing Protect Yourself at All Times grow.
Appreciate you, bro. Good seeing you, man.
Good seeing you too. Adrian Clark, such a nice guy. Make sure to check out his program, Protect Yourself at All Times. He gave you the website. Make sure to look at it. Next up, super nice guy, active duty Marine, and boxing writer for nyfights.com, also a managing editor for nyfights.com. Abraham Gonzalez is such a stand-up guy. It's easy to see why fighters open up to him. He's straightforward, honest, so likable, and he checks in. He is all over boxing. I mean, he talks to everybody, talks to them right before fight camps, has his weekly column Around the Corner with Abe on NY Fights. Incredibly insightful guy, incredibly knowledgeable about boxing. We talk about all things boxing. Here's my talk with Abraham Gonzalez. Abe, thank you so much for joining me today. How are you doing?
Good, man. Thank you for having me, Jeremy. I appreciate it.
You know, before we talk about the big news of the day, which is probably going to rock boxing for quite a bit, I've always been curious. You know, how does an active duty Marine end up becoming not just a writer but a managing editor for NY Fights? How did that all come together?
Wow, that's it's a funny, it's kind of a funny story. I met Michael Woods through Twitter, and when he was calling fights for Flicks, I think it was Flicks or Epics, and it just kind of went from there. Then he went from ESPN to starting NY Fights, and then we communicated, and he said, "Hey, I want you to come on board," and everything else just kind of developed from there.
Well, I love what you're doing with it. To anyone that's listening or watching, nyfights.com, Abe Gonzalez, check him out. His Twitter handle is on the bottom there, and you can see it. And, a writer that I really respect, and that's why he's on today to talk about some boxing. And the big story, Abe, we were going to talk about Spence versus Pacquiao, and that's now all changed to Pacquiao versus Ugas. So what was your initial reaction when you got that news?
Wow. That was my initial reaction. I was working on a story, and then and all of a sudden I see this email pop up, and I saw Manny Pacquiao and Spence. I said, "Oh, this is not good." And it wasn't like a media alert for a press conference or anything like that. It didn't say any of that. I said, "Oh, this is not good." And I clicked on it, and I saw the article or the press release, and I was like, "Wow." What was I surprised? There was a little bit in me that wasn't, only because Ugas was put on the card, and I felt like he was always the backup in case something ever happened. COVID has been the popular thing, so I felt like he was the standby, just in case something happened, and it just ended up working out that way.
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you why I was surprised. First of all, I guess we shouldn't be surprised because this is 2021, and the summer of 2021, which is proved to be very fatal to big boxing matches. Every time we think that we're going to get a big boxing match, somehow it just dissipates overnight. Whether it's Tyson Fury talking about Anthony Joshua, oh yeah, it's signed, we're going to be in Saudi Arabia, and then oh no, that didn't happen, and then it's going to be Wilder, and then that didn't happen, and now this fight. I thought this one was going to be more solidified, but it's one of those freak injuries. I haven't gotten the details of it. It seems like he just went into the doctor to get inspected as normal, and bad news, you have a torn retina.
And that's what it appears. I don't understand that part though. Like
Mhm.
how does he not know before the medical screening that that is an issue? Unless he saw that there was an issue, said, "Well, let me get it checked out," and then during that time period, they discovered that it was something. Maybe he just felt like he had blurred vision, or and he got something in his eye. It kind of sounded a little weird, the way
Mhm.
they explained it, but in the end, he's got it. However that happened, uh, I don't know if he was sparring yesterday. I mean, those
Mhm.
those type of questions probably would be helpful in this situation, but we're given limited information, and so now he's off back to Dallas to get surgery, and now we have Pacquiao versus Ugas.
And as people that are listening to this podcast, they're hearing two segments. You're the second one. And in the first one, I talked to Adrian Clark just the day before, and Adrian well, friend of
Mhm.
both of ours. And it was all about Errol Spence. What can you tell me about Errol Spence? Give me your inside perspective. And none of this was on the radar when talking to Adrian. He had just been with them. He was he was working on getting his fight trunks for the fight. That was his
Wow.
big thing. He's like, yeah, I got to go take care of his trunks, but yeah, no, he's looking great. And then the day after talking to him, this hit. So I can say that this was definitely a surprise. This wasn't something that they were expecting. Luckily, they had a champion. Happens to be the WBA belt that Pacquiao no longer has, since he was ruled to no longer be the champion in recess. So there's a little bit of a storyline there where you've got a bit of the revenge factor. And even I'm sure you read the press release. He had that little comment there that said titles are won in the ring. So there was that little biting comment there that, okay, we'll see who the WBA champion is.
Yeah, and he's got a little bit of a chip on his shoulder. Prior to Pacquiao Spence, there was talk that his fight with Spence was a done deal, and then
Mhm.
Pacquiao decided to come back, and then all of a sudden it's Pacquiao and Spence. So he may feel a little bit dissed,
Mhm.
for a lack of a better term, but and I think he's going into this fight with that. He's gone through some medical stuff where it looks like he had some chemo of some sort, or he had not chemo, he had to shave his eyebrows and his head, and he had some rare disease or has it. So he's been kind of going through some stuff and just struggling with life in general. And I think that maybe he feels like he's earned this shot, even if it came in the way of Spence not being able to fight due to his injury.
So with this new opponent, with Yordenis Ugas, someone that the casual boxing fan might not be familiar with, he is the WBA, and we'll talk about the WBA a little bit later. He is the WBA welterweight champion. Um, Obviously, Pacquiao is going to be a massive favorite in this fight. He's got the name recognition, he's got the legacy, he's a legend. At the same time, he's 42 years old. Ugas 35 years old, so he's not a spring chicken either. But um, is Ugas a big underdog in this fight, or do you give him a legitimate chance in this one?
I think I give him a legitimate chance. He gave Sean Porter everything he could handle for 12 rounds. I was there ringside and I saw that fight myself. That was a very close fight. Granted, I know that Pacquiao is not Sean Porter, uh, but Sean Porter is still a world class athlete. He's a former champion. He gave Spence everything that he could handle. He gave Thurman, Garcia, all these guys everything that they can handle. He's a tough guy, and Ugas went 12 rounds with him legitimately. Even knocked him down, or lack of a knockdown, for whatever they decided to call it at the end. And so I think he has a good chance. But I also feel like there's room in there for him to stink it up as
Mhm.
well. He does have that ability to stink this fight up, and I hope that that doesn't happen. But there is that possibility that he stinks it up, and everybody just goes home upset after 12 rounds.
The one thing that scares me for Ugas, I mean, they're in the same boat where they're both getting new opponents on short notice, so they have to start game planning for each other, which, obviously they had their own separate fights. They had their minds centered on those fights. Now they have to both shift. So there's that situation for both of them. The difference to me, and I know a lot of people don't always make a big deal about it, but Pacquiao being a southpaw, he was a southpaw fighting another southpaw. Now he's a southpaw fighting an orthodox fighter, something that he's very used to. Probably suits him a little bit better than fighting another southpaw. Ugas, he's fighting a southpaw. And that's not an easy thing as an orthodox fighter to do. I got to say, just even something that small, I would say it puts him at a disadvantage. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. And so it's going to be Ugas that will probably have to make the biggest adjustment in a shorter period of time between now and fight night, more so than Manny Pacquiao. Manny Pacquiao has been there, done that, seen every style possible that there is. Ugas hasn't. Ugas hasn't seen Manny Pacquiao or fought someone at that level. We're talking about like if you compare it to karate where you got yellow belt, green belt, brown and black. Manny Pacquiao is probably black belt with a few tabs on his on his belt, and Ugas is going to be, going up against a guy that's many levels ahead or above, some of the guys that he fought, even at the Sean Porter. Manny Pacquiao is still a legend in the sport. It's going to be a very, very tough fight for Ugas, but I'm not saying that he can't, somehow pull it out, because he can. I think any fighter can win at any moment, and we've seen Pacquiao, have a Jeff Horn type of night, even though I thought he won that fight too. But those things happen. Boxing happens and judging happens, and so who really knows? But it's going to be interesting to see how this one plays out. But I do agree the adjustment is more so on Ugas than it is on Pacquiao.
So the conventional wisdom is going to be, all right, Pacquiao, safe to say that the safe bet's going to be Pacquiao by unanimous decision. What would you say to that? Is that what you would be betting, or are you seeing a different outcome to this thing?
Me personally, I think it's going to be a Pacquiao stoppage late.
hmm I could see that too. Ugas has never been stopped before, but he's never fought a guy like Pacquiao before either. So that's something interesting.
Yeah.
Last question before we move on to a different topic. Does this change Manny Pacquiao's career trajectory? Does he hold out for another mega fight now that he's not getting one against Spence or a guy like Spence?
No, I think he's done after this. I really believe that. I really believe that he's done. And it's going to be on some, oh, well, he's still getting
hmm
paid Manny money for this fight. So it's not
hmm
like he's missing out on the Spence money, because he's still getting Spence money for this fight anyway.
hmm
So uh, I, I think that this is it for him. He's got, the politics. He has nothing else to prove. This was just another another like big accomplishment on his resume. This is another stone on Nathaniel's glove. That's all it was. you
I,
know
that's a good
it's just
analogy. I like that.
that's all it was. That's all it was. But now, I mean, he beats Ugas and he rides off in the sunset, and then let everybody else figure out what they're gonna do next year.
I like it. The other thing that happened this this past weekend, the Michael Fox versus Gabriel Maestra fight. Uh, I mean, I know I wrote about it for my after the fight column. A lot's been said about it. You had the information that right after the bout, I mean, Corey Erdman came out and just screenshotted everything, put it out there like, hey, this is who made this decision, this terrible 117-110 decision. Now everybody knows who Gloria Martinez Rizzo is. Unfortunately, it'd be better if we didn't know who she was. I mean, uh, what do you say after all this? What do we do? What do we have to say about sanctioning bodies, the WBA? What are we expecting to happen, or does anything happen, or does anything change after this?
I tell you, as much as I want to believe that something is going to change, it's not. This is
Mhm.
something that yes, in the heat of the moment, we're all talking about it. Next week, no one's going to remember that it even happened. Unfortunately, that's the reality of the situation. We live in the now, and tomorrow we live in tomorrow. But yesterday was yesterday, and we keep it moving. I don't think that the WBA is until the promoters or the fighters or both, or the networks stop recognizing some of these sanctioning bodies and say, you know what, like we're not doing it. Maybe they start blurring out the belts. Maybe the fighters, give back the belts and not quote unquote defend them. Until they start doing stuff like that, we're going to continue to go through this process. It's just as simple as that. Fighters, they still the belts do matter to them.
Mhm.
These are guys and girls that in some cases come from nothing, right? And so that belt signifies an accomplishment in life. And unfortunately, it comes at a price of sanctioning fees and these ridiculous decisions. And so it's hard for them to put up a fight against that, because that symbol, that belt means something to them. And so I guess until they take a stand, this is going to continue to happen.
Yeah,
Unless, I was going to say, unless they all kind of take a stand and then just say, hey, we're going to just label the Ring magazine, because I do believe that the Ring magazine does not take sanction fees, but
mhm.
we'll just say the Ring magazine is the recognized championship for each division, and just keep it moving from there.
And I could actually see something like that starting to happen, just because this one feels so different. We've had bad decisions, we've had bad judges, we've had judges that we've questioned. We've never had a judge like this with such a trail of just horrible, vile, prejudiced, racist comments that are right there in her own words, where you can see it, and you watch it and you're like, how did this happen? How did she still have a job? And how is she getting these fights, considering the things that she was saying? Someone definitely dropped the ball, and we're not getting good answers from the WBA. We're getting terrible, basic, uh, not even basic, I would say pretty poor PR responses from the WBA. It just feels like this has got to be a little bit different. Something's got to come from this. And unless the WBA kind of falls on the sword and says, listen, we screwed up, we got to do better, she's gone, it doesn't seem like there's enough that could really appease people with it, that this is such a big deal. And it was such a grotesque outcome from a abhorrent person, that maybe this does spawn a little bit of change. I don't know if it does, but if this doesn't, I don't know what else does. And as you said, the Ring magazine title, and to be fair, it's not just the WBA; they're the worst right now. But this is something that's been going back. I found an article from Pat Putnam from 1982 talking about the WBC and the WBA and how terrible they are, and then he focused on the WBA and how they had an official, basically judges coming out and saying that, yeah, we were basically swayed with money to vote for a certain guy, or be lenient in a fight. I mean, it just seems like there's decades of information showing us that sanctioning bodies are up to shady practices.
Yeah, and then it's like, what do you do, right? I mean, you still have Adelaide Bird judging fights. I'm like, I thought that was going to be the situation that was going to push everybody to get these belts off, but no. Now we have
Uh,
this person in it, and what was it? A couple weeks ago, it was the other gentleman. I forgot his name already, and where he gave a bad scorecard. So it's just it was a WBA situation too. So I'm just so over it already with
mhm.
these judges. My message to the fighters: hey, score a knockout, and then you don't have to leave it to the judges.
Yeah, and unfortunately, Pat Putnam's response was, unless we have a federal governing body over boxing, there's not a whole lot that's going to change, because at least then it's regulated. Right now, it's still the wild wild west, which is playing to the sanctioning bodies, unfortunately. And it's frustrating. And there you go. Two more topics I want to talk to you about, and then I'll let you go. Olympics, I know that we talked a little bit about this. I would say that we weren't Jake Donovan into it, who was right there in front of the action. We were kind of casual purveyors. But just kind of looking over the landscape of the Olympics, it was fun. It was exciting. There was I like the fact that it's more mimicking the pro game now than 8 years ago when you still had the amateur scoring where they were going with certain bouts. This idea that okay, now it's more like the pros. Were there any boxers that stood out to you as all right, this is a guy that I think could have good success as a pro?
So to be honest with you, there's a fighter there that Lucas could tell, old Lukey. He was quick to point out. He has that ITR boxing. Shout out to him.
Hmm.
So um, Kosi Tanaka's brother.
Ah.
Yes, Kosi Tanaka's brother, Southpaw. And I know, outside of the U.S. names that the Keyshawn Davises and the Duke Reagan, like we know those guys are going. Keyshawn Davis is going to be a star, right? And so,
Hmm.
but Kosi Tanaka's brother, I was really interested in him because Kosi, his brother is has got a great story, and so I saw him fight and talking to Lukey about it, he agreed. He said, "Hey, this guy is probably going to be a special fighter in the pros, and he just
Hmm.
has that type of style." So I think he's one of those guys that's going to be one to watch. And then on the women's side, O'Shea Jones, I think that she is going to really get a good push coming out of the Olympics. She seems like she has the personality, the charisma for it, along with the boxing skills. So I think that she is definitely going to be one that is going to get that big push uh, coming from the Olympics.
And again, referencing a shared friend with Lukey, one name he was screaming to me on the first episode of the podcast was Katayev from Russia, big bodied, middleweight, beast of a guy. He didn't get a medal, I don't believe, or he got eliminated right before the finals. And there were flaws within his boxing, but he's a big bruiser, and it's hard to imagine running away from a guy that stout and that hard fisted for 12 rounds. So I like what he said about Katayev, and he was still like, dude, this guy's got that special kind of knockout power, which makes a difference. So that's one guy that interested me. I don't think anyone was surprised by Bakhmadir Jalalov from Uzbekistan. Everyone knew he was going to be good. Is he world championship good? I don't know that at this point, but he looked pretty good. um, and I'm other than that, someone that I noticed before that again didn't medal, but I thought I actually probably should have, and was one of those fights where I thought was debatable was Caroline Dubois out of Great Britain, Daniel Dubois' sister. I think she has something there too. So again, not winning a medal doesn't mean that you're not going to be a good pro. I would say more than anything, we see a lot of pros ending up winning titles that were never in the Olympics. So something to think about there. Last but not least, Shakur Stevenson versus Jamel Herring, upcoming in the future. You had the pleasure of talking to Jamel Herring at a Marine function not that long ago. What were the big takeaways from that discussion that you had with him?
Confidence. He's got all the confidence in the world about this fight. He's really motivated. He understands. He understands that he's fighting a younger guy. That is going to be bringing all that youth and athleticism. He knows that. He knows he's not 25 anymore. He understands that. But the important thing is to not only recognize that, but to prepare appropriately for that. And it seems like his team, uh, you know, in regards to his meals and perfecting athletes is the one that takes care of his meals. He told me that they're crafting up a specific diet just for this fight. Bomac is already contacting him, and they're going over pre-camp things, and so he's really dialed in and focused on what is about to happen here in the next 2 months or so. And he definitely wants this fight. There's plenty of people that have said that he has no shot at winning, and he is taking that as fuel and motivation to to get that W. And he has a ton of confidence coming into this fight, and I think we may very well see the best version of Jamel Herring yet.
It certainly seems that he's a fighter that's gotten better with age. I mean, you don't often say that, but whether we're talking about a Lennox Lewis, I remember his comments that he's aging like a fine wine. And it certainly seems that Jamel Herring in this, kind of what would be the later years of most fighters' careers, he's really hitting a different level. The fact that he absolutely destroyed Carl Frampton in a fight that I thought Frampton was going to be very competitive and I thought Frampton was going to win. He really seems to be taking it to the next level, that it's maybe he just needed this time to kind of learn actively, maybe not getting the starts that some of these other guys have, but now he's figured it out.
Yeah, and a credit to his team, right? So he joined Bomac and Company, a couple years ago, and he made that turn, that quick turnaround on his fighting style, the way he prepares, just about everything that involves his game. He gave it a jump start, and so sometimes you don't see the effect that new trainers or atmosphere has on you until you fight a couple fights. That change and how it affected him. And so I think that Frampton fight was a sign of where Jamel Herring is at, and who he is right now as a fighter with that team, with Bomac Company.
It's certainly going to be an intriguing matchup. The veteran versus kind of the young kid off the block. That's the stellar superstar that people are talking about. Southpaw versus Southpaw. I can't wait for that fight. I think it's going to be fantastic.
Both Olympians.
Both Olympians. Yes. Well said. Abe, thank you so much for joining me today and sharing some of your wisdom. I appreciate your work. I appreciate everything that you do. Thank you for your service in the Marines and your service with nyfights.com.
Thank you, Jeremy. Thank you for having me, and I appreciate it. And just keep killing it and keep doing what you're doing on a consistent basis.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Such a treat to get information from Abraham and see things from his perspective. He knows his stuff. Take his predictions and his insight to the bank. Abe, amazing. Check out his work at nyfights.com. And again, thank you for his service in the Marines and as a boxing writer. Last but not least, we've got our interview with boxer, undefeated super welterweight Chordale Booker. Chordale is getting ready for a couple of fights here. Someone that should be on your radar as a prospect. I know with COVID and everything, that's kind of pushed things back for him a little bit, but he's ready to make a splash in 2021. Talks to me about his career, his fascinating life. I think you're really going to like this one. Here's Chordale Booker. Chordale, thank you so much for joining me today. How are you doing?
Good. How about yourself?
Good. It's I'm really curious. I've read a lot about you and your career in boxing and your career outside of boxing. You're a man of many talents, as I've seen. Kind of tell me, how did you find the sport of boxing?
I mean, boxing was always something I enjoyed. I played the fight night growing up, and then I was getting into a lot of fights when I was younger, and I always felt like boxing would have helped me back then. But when I was young, there was no boxing gyms, and when I got in high school, I was so into basketball, I didn't want to quit basketball for boxing. So once I finished high school, I got arrested, and I said this was time for me to get inside the gym because I needed something else to do, so that way I wasn't sitting on the street.
Mhm. Was that something that you just internally kind of sought out on your own, or were there other people kind of saying, hey, maybe this would be a good outlet for you?
No, I did that myself. I knew that I needed something to change, and basketball was that for me because there was things that I was doing at the time, and it kept me out of trouble. Like when my friends were getting arrested, I was doing the same things that they were doing, but being in the season, so I was practicing, so I wasn't outside with them, and so I just kind of pushed myself into boxing heavy because I knew that's something I wanted to do, and it would keep me in the gym as opposed to out in the street.
When you're going through and you start boxing as an amateur, what was the first sign that you realized you had some real boxing talent?
I would say my my ninth fight. Also, it was a competitive match. He asked me how many fights did I have, and I told him, and he said, "Wow, that's amazing." And then shortly after that, like a few months after that, I fought a guy, Alex Martin, who was #2 in the country. And the same thing happened where it was a close fight, and I actually thought I won that fight. And he asked me the same thing: how many fights do I have? And at that time, I think I had about 12, 13 when I fought him. That's when I decided, like, if these guys are 1 and 2, this is something I can do because these guys have 100-something fights, and I only have 13 and 9.
As far as, winning your national title, like from that moment on, did you say like, you know what was your next big goal after winning that national title?
After winning the nationals, I became #1 in the country. So I felt like I was at the top of the sport, but I still didn't win the Daily News Golden Gloves in New York. So my job wasn't done because that's the reason why I started doing amateur boxing, was to win the Golden Gloves. So it's funny, like I was #1 in the country, but I was happy, I was excited, I cried, tears of joy, but as soon as I got home, I'm like, yo, we back to work, bro. Like I didn't win the Golden Gloves, and this is what I started for. So that was my next thing, and then becoming Olympic and like trying to make it to the Olympics was something that just came along the way. I had an Olympic spot. I was the #2 seed in the Olympic trials. So then it became, all right, well, let me see if I can make it to the Olympics now. So
you've been on a lot of people's radars for a long time, and I know there have been some obstacles. There was, correct me if I'm wrong, you had an Achilles tear in 2019.
Yeah, yep, 2019. Yep.
So you have the Achilles tear, and when 2020 hits, and obviously everything happens with COVID, how did you get through all of that? And was that still kind of like when everything was kind of going crazy with COVID? Were you still on the rehab from the Achilles tear?
Well, for me, I was excited. I was ready to get back to boxing. And then the shutdown happened. I was still I just started back in the gym right before COVID shut everything down. I was supposed to have a fight, but it was supposed to be like an easy fight, tune up. Then later down the year, I ended up having to fight a guy who just came off of a fight, and I really just fought. Honestly, I didn't really train for the fight the way I was supposed to. I was hitting the bag, hitting the pads, but I didn't really have any real sparring because everybody was afraid to get COVID at the time, and if you caught COVID, then you couldn't fight, and nobody wanted to die either too over that. So everybody was just trying to avoid getting COVID. My coach, myself, the rest of my team. So that was rough. But now that we have a little bit more like information about it, I see people have been more open about going to gyms and sparring. So I've been getting the work that I need now.
I know that fight with Sonny Duverson was a tough fight. Looking back on it, what did you gain from that fight? What did you learn from that fight?
I learned more so for myself, just to always prepare, stay ready, And if I'm not really 100% ready, then it's okay to just say this isn't my time right now. You know, I could have just waited until another year or until whenever I fought. So that way I'm 100% confident, ready. I know my conditioning is up. I just don't want to. I don't want to lose on not being prepared. You know, my preparation being 100%.
Mm-hmm. And talking about being prepared, I've seen that you have sparred some really top-notch fighters. I saw that you had some experiences with Tony Harrison and Jarrett Hurd. How have those experiences helped you grow as a fighter?
Tony Harrison was probably the best time I had in the camp. Nobody ever brought me to camp the way Tony brought me to camp. I got to actually stay out in Detroit for weeks. I got to see what Detroit was like. Detroit rough, but it was cool because I really got to train alongside somebody who was world champion status not too long ago, and just seeing how he prepares for a fight and having me run with him, train with him, do strength and conditioning, spar with him. I got to see that I had to take it up a notch, and that's always gonna stick with me now. Because when I train that much harder. So I'm like, oh, this is how these guys are trained. Now I gotta do a little bit more. I can't rely so much on my talents. I have to work hard too.
So looking at 2021 now, I know that you have, at least from what I saw, one fight coming up on September 25th, but I'm also hearing that you have maybe a couple fights signed to coming up.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a free agent, so I'm doing pretty much what I want to. So I'm liking that. I got fight September 4th, fight September 25th, and then I'm working on trying to get something in Connecticut with one of the promoters here, because I never fought at home. So I'm trying to just bring my fans something home, so that way they can come to stadium out here, and I can try to pack it out.
You're in a very loaded division. If you had it your way, are there maybe 2 or 3 guys, if you could fight anybody, that you would say, I want to fight that guy?
It's always gonna be Charlo for me, always, because he's the top. He's the number one person. He's the number one fighter. Everybody should be gunning for him, because you beat him, you get the world title, and then everybody's gonna be looking to fight you, and that's what I want. I want everybody to want me. So, you know, because then you don't have to look for anybody, right? You get all the fights that you want, because now you got to defend the belt. And the second one. Oh, I'm gonna say Jimmy Williams. I've been calling him out on social media a lot. He's from Connecticut, man. He's under Jimmy Birchfield, and yeah, I've been calling him out. I really don't care about fighting him, but I mean, it'd be great for Connecticut, just because we're 2 Connecticut fighters. But I mean, that's an easy one for me. If I don't stop Jimmy, I'll be upset with myself.
I know. I'm going to throw out a name here, and in this, correct me if I'm wrong. 2016 Olympic trials, you lose 1 point to Charles Conwell. Am I correct?
Yeah.
Any interest in ever meeting with Charles again, possibly?
Yeah. Oh, me and Charles, we definitely gonna get it. That's definitely that's happening. That's not even like one up for question. Like, we both know that that's coming. We cool with each other, like, as far as social media, and we respect each other as fighters. Tony actually picked both of us to be the next big things at 154. So it's crazy, because we both spar with him, and he's noticed that both of us are very talented. So, I mean, when we fight, it's gonna be great. It's gonna be one of those fights where people are like, I hope we get to the highest level, so we're gonna leave our mark, like Gotti and Ward.
Oh, I love that. That would be a great combination. And you know, I've seen both of you guys fight, and you're both incredibly talented fighters. Kind of looking outside of boxing a little bit, when I talked about that you're a man of many talents, acting, modeling, Any plans for doing any of that kind of stuff still?
I'm gonna say yeah. I'm not gonna turn that down ever. Whenever I get the call, I'm always thinking like, I don't want to do that, but then I can't resist it. You know, like it's like you just get paid to take pictures. You know, walking down the runway, you get to be around a bunch of like interesting people. You're just like, oh man, this is a fun time. You know, so I enjoy it.
All right, so a chance that we might see you in a fashion week again. Okay, got it.
Yeah,
I like it.
Definitely.
Last question for me. I know that you have a foundation, Go the Distance Foundation. Maybe talk about that a little bit, and if people want to contribute, how would they do that?
Well, right now we haven't been doing any fundraisers. I haven't had any fundraisers right now, so I don't really know what to say about that part. But
yeah,
you can always help us out. Right now, with my Go the Distance Foundation, we have been helping RF Youth Boxing, and I've been being the coach for RF Youth Boxing for the summer camp program. I want to say we've had about 18 kids this summer. It grew from, we only had about 12 before. We have 18 now. The after school program at 3:00, I also run on Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And that program has grown to about 18 to 24 kids now. And even the younger kids from like 5 to 10 has grown to about 27 kids. So we've been doing our thing as far as helping the youth come off the street and into the gym. So if anybody has any kids that you want to join boxing, they don't have to fight. It's just for them to have an outlet. Reach out to me on Instagram or Facebook, whatever, anything.
I love it. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. Best of luck come September. You got 2 fights and maybe another one coming up after that. And keep doing what you're doing.
Thank you. I appreciate your time.
What a fantastic interview. Make sure that you guys are paying attention to what's going on with Chordale Booker, his upcoming fights. And man, it'd be great if we could see him in there with the likes of Charles Conwell, who's also a friend of the show. And yeah, that would be a heck of a fight. I mean, as I talked to Chordale later, he told me that Triller tried to bring him in to fight Conwell in this upcoming bout that Conwell is going to be on their fight card. They only gave him 3 weeks notice. He says there's no way I was taking a fight against Charles Conwell with only 3 weeks notice. So, almost got that fight, but we're going to have to wait a little bit longer. But definitely check him out as he really gets going in 2021. Thank you to all my guests, Adrian Clark, Abe Gonzalez, Chordale Booker. Make sure that you guys are liking and subscribing. If you're watching it on YouTube, like the video, subscribe, do your thing. If you're listening to it, make sure that you subscribe so that way you get all the new episodes. I've already got action planned for next week's episode. I'm loving it. Hopefully you guys are loving it too. I'll catch you later, boxing fans. See you next time.